people like to start the new year with 1,000 resolutions, but I am not that gal. I like to start things slow and steady. So here we are, almost midway through January, and this is the first vlog of the new year. Welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. I am Alexis. I am a full-time artist in Brooklyn, New York. And here I like to share my life in New York City. A little bit of the city, a little bit of art, a little bit of what inspires the art. And if that sounds like something that you're into, I invite you to stick around. I have been very busy behind the scenes, working on new projects and new pieces and really getting things in motion. I feel like this is going to be a good year. I feel that in a deeper, stronger way than I think I have since 2018. So I am excited. And so I am working through the very first of those larger community scenes that we sketched together this fall. And I have cut out the trees, and you can see this is just kind of what's left. So I'm working on the greenery and the background for that. And I also sketched my second large sketch for this collection. My hope is to have 4 done by the end of February. You can see how I've taken that large piece of paper and I've already started to deconstruct it to be the stencil. So, for that second sketch, we took a page this large, right? And it starts to be deconstructed as each layer is cut into smaller and smaller pieces. So it feels really good to be cutting paper, and I'm excited. So let's go ahead and get this greenery done, and then from there I can start to wrap my brain around a color palette. As I create each of my community spaces, I spend a lot of time really thinking about who to include and what a truly inclusive and thriving and compassionate community looks like. Because it's my hope that at some point, everyone can see themselves represented in something that I've created, and see themselves represented in a way that is affirming and powerful and joyful. And I think that there's great importance in that. And so I might not be somebody who is writing legislation or changing laws or has significant power in ways that can bring about great change, but I do know that it is within my power to do something that affirms the gifts that I have. And so if I am an artist, how am I creating art that speaks to humanity and speaks to what is possible when we push back against the limitations that we have been sold, and when we dare to envision something different? So part of starting the year slow is taking time to read. Mario's parents have been giving us a book every year for Christmas the past couple of years, which has been really nice. And so this year I got All Fours by Miranda July from them, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed her conversation around women in perimenopause and postmenopause, and just the idea of standing authentically in who you are and not being afraid to show like your fullness of self. I thought that that was like what I really got out of that book. I really enjoyed it. And I listened to, while I was working on that sketch for that second large community piece, I listened to a book called The Wedding People. And listen, it was very silly, but it was one of those that just kept popping up, so I thought I'd give it a try. I think I got it for like very few dollars as an audiobook. And the thing that I enjoyed about it the most was that the woman in the book was from St. Louis, and they talked about like Forest Park and what have you. And you're from St. Louis, I feel like you will always have a deep love for the city. And so it was nice to hear of my hometown, you know, even if minorly discussed in a book. I enjoyed that. And I am currently listening to a true crime, not even a true crime, like a murder book. I know I'm trying to move away from those, but I bought this one last year, and I'm just going through my Audible and listening to what I have before I allow myself to buy any new books. But this one was recommended by Georgia Hardstark from My Favorite Murder, the podcast. I've listened to that since like episode 3, so it's been like one of the, if not the longest standing podcast that I've listened to. But she recommended a book called The Nothing Man a few months back, maybe 6 months ago, and so I'm listening to that. So far it's like, it's okay. And for my book club, man, I have done a lot of reading and it feels really good. There's something about like a slow and steady like easing into a new year. But for my book club, we read The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and it was brilliant. Later tonight, I need to get out into Williamsburg. I'm gonna go to Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It's one of our friends' birthdays, and we're gonna go to a place that was once like an immersive theater that's now a bar / dance spot, and we'll do that. So we got a lot to do today. So I'm gonna take you along on a little bit of book club, and then I'll meet you back here at my desk.
But I think that that's like a direct result of the very systematic defunding of the education system. Because as a nation, we have forgotten how to critically think. And there's like this whole thing with like Meta now. They fired all their fact checkers and anything can be put on the internet now. It's like they want to very purposefully and systematically make us dumber and feed us like as many lies as they can. And to your point, to where we then have a hard time distinguishing between fact and truth, or fact and fiction, you know, and then it just becomes very, very confusing. And I don't know, like he talks about how like there was a section in the book going back to like education on 86. He said like the capability of banking education to minimize or annul the students' creative power and to stimulate their credulity serves the interests of the oppressors, who care neither to have the world revealed nor to see it transformed. The oppressors use their, quote, humanitarianism to preserve the profitable situation. Thus, they react almost instinctively against any experiment in education which stimulates the critical faculties and is not content with a partial view of reality, but always seeks out the ties with which link one point to another and one problem to another. And when I first started at the last school that I was at, I was tasked with writing a history curriculum that was in like the indigenous people of America, the enslaved people of America, and then the women's movement. You're talking about people who have been systematically oppressed, and their journey through that. And I had a couple board members come in, and they pulled the head of school aside and said, "You cannot be teaching this. What are you doing? Raising a bunch of radicals?" And they squashed it. It made 2 board members really upset. And so the head of school said, "We're done. We're not doing it anymore." And I was like, "But do you even know who you're serving? Do you know the population that you're serving?" But it was like that idea of, we don't want them to connect the dots, and we don't want them to start to question the systems of power. So that whole section on education, I was just like, oh man. Like I really loved it, because I feel like he 100% got it. I really like how he talked about how the monuments and the statues that celebrate these great oppressors, and how all these bodies of learning can exist on a campus but these are like celebrated figures. And I've been wanting to do a deeper dive on Reconstruction, but it was really interesting how it was like Reconstructionists and then quote redeemers, and that language was new to me, where I was like, oh that's powerful, right? Like these white people are redeeming the nation, where I was like, dang. And so like and he said that like, but their redemption is not about honoring the past, it's about killing the future. Like that was like such a significant line, where it was like, they don't want us to progress and become something greater. They want it to stay the same, like period. You know? And so like these monuments aren't about like, oh, well, this one thing happened and this one person. It's like, no, they want it. That's where they want us to stay, you know? But I do think that we hold on to the idea that it is too complex to talk about because of the stories that we have access to. And I think that is a very intentional elimination of narrative and story, and how he I love how, you know, in that whole section he was holding like journalists accountable, or he was like, you know, and I also said, but it is the journalists themselves who are playing God. It is the journalists who decide which sides are legitimate and which are not, which views shall be considered and which pushed out of the frame. And this power is an extension of the power of other curators of the culture, network execs, producers, publishers, whose core job is deciding which stories get told and which do not. When you are erased from the argument and purged from the narrative, you do not exist. And I think that is like what we have seen, and that's why it's like so complex. I really love how at multiple points throughout this book, he was like, I'm not gonna like listen to both sides. And like the devil's advocate, So we know that happens, and we have seen that happen in Palestine, time and time again in very small ways, but like thinking about like the first Nakba, and like, you know, it's like, at what point it will never, okay, I mean, I know the answer. It's like, it's never okay for people to like stand up for themselves against the power that has been like chosen to be like the good power, right? So like the American government was like this good thing that happened to our land. And so like, if there were these like indigenous skirmishes against the white settlers, colonizers, right? Then it was like, oh, these savages, but they were like defending their land and their people and their right to life. And it's like, and I think that they've eliminated so much of like that depth of understanding because they don't want us to be able to apply it to the things that are happening today in Sudan or Palestine. And it's like, this morning started a little early, which was great because I've been wanting to get up earlier. There was like tons and tons of honking outside. So I got a bit of a head start, and it's early enough for me to get to the gym before people get off work. So I don't know if this is like typical rush hour time for like the lunch break, but I am gonna go and walk. I told you all that I'm trying to get in like, you know, an average of 7,000 steps a day and get my lungs strong. So I'm gonna go get changed and do a little walk at the gym, and then we can work on this a little bit more before tonight. So I have showered
and eaten, and I feel like a new woman. I'm really glad that I did that. But I honestly think I might wrap up this vlog here. I am gonna just spend some time with my thoughts as I figure out what color palette I want to use for this piece, or for this collection, if you will. I think that's kind of where I've been. I've been really enjoying just like the private aspect of creating, and I think that that has prevented me from jumping on with you all sooner. Don't worry, I am going to crawl out of this like introvert cave, but I'm still like halfway in, halfway out. And it takes me a minute to like fully get my feet back on the ground. But I've been really enjoying just like being a total hermit and being in deep reflection about what I want this year to be. And you know, I mentioned earlier that I don't want to be a product-based business. I think that I felt like I needed to do that because so many of the people that I knew who were artists and who were like quote unquote successful were successful because they sold products. And I don't want that to be what I do. I don't want to have to be thinking of like seasonal collections of doodads that are perhaps not useful and end up in landfills. It's also not why I began this journey as an artist. And so I think having done the Artist's Way last year, which was significant, and really allowing myself the time to reflect and to dig deep, I was able to get really, really clear about where I want to go moving forward. And so I'm still gonna like offer what I have, and I think I do want to try like a couple of markets in the like fall time maybe, because I do have all the ornaments and I like making that. So like there's still like this like small, it's not even like product, it's still handmade stuff, but like small aspect of like products. But what I really want is to be creating collections that mean something, that are found in spaces where they can inspire and I don't know, make people feel some certain way about the future that we could have when we care for one another. And so that's where I'm headed this year. Just lots of bigger pieces with more detail, which I'm really excited about, and giving myself permission to kind of work through some things that I've had in my mind but haven't had the courage to try. And I would love to take you along on that. But yeah, man, this was kind of all over, but I knew if I didn't just like jump in, I was gonna drag my feet longer, and I didn't want to do that because I really wanted to like pop in and see how y'all are doing and see how y'all are starting the new year and kind of share what's been happening here behind the scenes. But I just want to say thank you for spending your time with me. I truly am so honored that you're here, and I am really looking forward to all that this year will hold. And if you have not yet subscribed, but you would like to, I would be honored if you followed along as I shared my life as a full-time artist who is finding her feet and getting very, very clear about the life I want to build. I would be honored if you followed along. And with all of that being said, whatever time of day you've watched this, I hope it's been a kind one. Until next time.